Hello everyone and welcome to another card video. Today I'm playing with some Say It With Stamps products called I Love Dad. I'm going to be coloring with a stencil. Let me show you. This is the I Love Dad stamp set that I'm using to make this card today, plus a handful of other products. And although I'm using a ton of cool products, this one is the one that was the most interesting to me. I've never colored an image this way, not a lined critter image, so I'm excited. I'm starting with the A2 Starburst cover plate. This panel is actually cut to 3.5 by 4 3/4. The Starburst design is very pretty. It actually reminds me of kind of a quilt design. I'm just going to put it in the center of this cover plate and run it through my die cutting machine. You could absolutely use some embroidery floss to stitch on this background and dress it up a bit, but I love white space, so that's what I'm going to use it as, a tone-on-tone white space for my background. I needed to cut an aperture for my bears to be looking up into the sky, kind of like a telescope maybe, I don't know. So I'm just using a basic circle die and trying to get it kind of in the center of my card. You know, I'm trying to line things up straight. I do try, sometimes. So I'm using the exact same piece of tape that I just used and running it through my die cutting machine once again to create a hole in the front of my card. I'm going to do some ink blending. This is a piece of heavyweight white cardstock, the same stuff that I just used. And I've made some marks just so I know about where my circle aperture is. And we're going to do some ink blending. I have a light blue, a dark blue, and a black ink, and I'm using this ink blending brush around the outside of that aperture to create a night sky, an evening sky. So my go-to for that is blue and black. I'm using that same blue ink blending brush for both blues. In between ink colors, I might brush it off onto a microfiber towel to clean it, but other than that, that is the only thing I do in between colors. To apply this color, I just literally just go around and around and around until my shoulder is sore. At this point, I wanted to bring in that dark black ink, so I'm taking it around the outside edge of this card panel just so that it can kind of peek into the aperture, into that hole in the front panel. Now, the entire time that I'm ink blending this background, I'm keeping in mind that the only thing that's going to be seen is this, kind of hole in the center. I go back through the colors several times. I don't even keep track of how many times I go back and forth, but I just go in through the blues and around in the black and try to keep those colors concentrated in the darker colors on the outside and the lighter colors in the center. Every once in a while, I will bring my little hole, my aperture panel over to where I'm working just to see how it kind of looks through the hole. Once I feel like we've achieved a night sky, I'll stop. Either that or my shoulder hurts and I'm done. I've brought in a small silicone mat. I'm going to tape this panel down to the silicone mat just so it can contain my mess. It doesn't need to be super tacky. In fact, I prefer a low tack tape. This is the Say It With Stamps Shooting Star Stencil, and I'm just arranging it here in my path so that it looks cool. I'm going to use some white texture paste, and I just want to be able to see as many stars through the aperture as possible. Again, I'm taking some low tack tape to just keep that stencil in place while I'm using the medium. I have basic Blick white modeling paste. You can tint this with ink. In fact, you'll see the ink on my panel get tinted with ink. You'll see this modeling paste get tinted by the ink that's on the panel. I'm trying to put a good amount of modeling paste on so that it does give the card some texture and the stars appear to be lifted up off of the card panel. See how wonderfully bright white it is right now? It doesn't stay that way. No matter how long you wait for your panel to dry, the modeling paste will absorb that ink. Right now, I'm spraying the background with shimmer spritz, 2 different types of shimmer spritz to give it that glitter effect. I'm stamping the bear images on that same heavyweight white cardstock using the same black ink that I used before. This time I used my Misty just in case I needed to restamp. It doesn't really matter what kind of ink you use because you're not coloring it with alcohol ink or water. You're just using more ink. To do this, I taped my paper down just so that it didn't move around, and then I lined up this stencil with the image that I'm currently coloring, recycling that same low-tack tape as before for this part of the project. I decided to use sponge daubers because I have one sponge dauber for every ink pad that I own, so that's why I'm using it. It was ease of use. However you like to apply ink in this manner, that's what you use. It's a small image, so you wouldn't need a huge blending brush. Something small would do the trick. I'm using two browns, a darker brown and a lighter brown, starting with the darker brown around the outside of the image to give the image some depth, some shadow, and then blending in that lighter brown. This was my first time coloring an image this way, in this fashion, using a stencil to color my bear. And I wasn't sure if I was going to like it very much, but honestly, it was so fast and it turned out so cute that I'm definitely going to consider buying these stencils in the future for this purpose. Of course, I would get more detail if I were coloring this with pencils or markers, but to make it really quick, I think this is fabulous. Just like as I inked the background, I went back and forth between the two browns, blending the colors together, trying to make it look like it has a little bit of dimension, but that's it, and it was done in no time. I also considered mixing a little bit of that brown ink in with the modeling paste and then going over the image with the modeling paste to give it a little bit of texture that way. I bet that would look cool as well, but I didn't do that here. I think it would be equally cool to have the mask for the image, that inner part, just so that we could ink blend around the outside of the image more easily. That's something to consider as well. I'm using the coordinating dies to cut these images out. I don't know. I may not have been able to color this any better with using another medium. This looks really good. I have an obsession with hand-drawn stars. I must have all the hand-drawn stars, and this set has, you guessed it, hand-drawn stars. So I absolutely had to find a way to incorporate all of the stars into my card design. So I decided to white heat emboss them onto this navy cardstock. To do this, I stamped it first in a clear sticky ink, and what you can't see is my heat tool heating up behind me. So I will take it to my heat tool and then magic! The film magic. It's already heat embossed. There are coordinating dies for all of the images in the I Love Dad stamp set. I love the hand-drawn stars. If you love hand-drawn stars, let me know in the comments. Give hand-drawn stars some love in the comments. So while I was heat embossing, I decided that I was going to heat emboss my sub-sentiment as well. It's going to say, wish upon a star. I wonder where I got that from. It's actually from the Say It With Stamps wish sentiments. And these are the Say It With Stamps strips. I haven't brought myself to cut them apart yet. I lose things sometimes, so sometimes it's better for me to just keep it as one, and then I might not lose it. Worst case scenario is I have extra blue strips. I don't see a downside here. It's the very best way to make sure your sentiment strip isn't wonky. So if the strip fits, use it. This is the wish sentiments and the die that coordinates with it. We're going to use this die. It has a shadow, like a back shadow, and then a front word die. I cut the word die from that same heavyweight white cardstock multiple times. 4 times to be exact, and saving the tittle of the eye every time. The shadow of that word die is being cut from the navy cardstock to give it a little bit of contrast. Once everything was cut out, I used liquid adhesive to adhere all of my layers for the word die together. It makes it like a chipboard piece, and I just think it looks really nice on the card. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort to layer these together, and I think it makes a huge impact. Now, I know what you're thinking. The top of the eye, right? I know. So I wait and adhere the entire word die to the shadow, and then I start messing with the top of the eye. For me, or in my opinion, it's easier to stack those little dots instead of trying to stack those dots and then put it somewhere. So having this shadow actually kind of helps this process. I can put a small amount of adhesive right where I want the top of the eye to be and then just stack them right on top of each other in that same location. Now my background has dried and now you can see my stars are blue because that modeling paste has absorbed the blue ink from the background. So this is my best solution for this issue. This is a Posca paint pen in white, and I'm going back over each of the tops of the stars. This is really easy with this pen. The nib just allows the the paint to flow out and make those stars white again. I'm sorry my big head is in the way, but I wanted to make sure that I align these two panels properly so that I didn't have to trim anything off. At this point, I'm just adhering the different elements that I've created onto the card in an arrangement that is pleasing to me. Certainly not forgetting the hand-drawn stars. I adhered this panel to an A2 top folding card base, and that's it. It's done. I didn't really change anything from the first practice card, but I do have a side-by-side for you. I think both versions of this card are absolutely adorable. I love the color palette. I dressed appropriately for the card today. Find PhotoPlay paper on social media, and until next time.